Americans are very addicted to coffee. Coffee really is a drug when you think about it. There's no end in sight for how this addiction, is growing. I want to give you some numbers. And these numbers, when I first came about them, were shocking. I was looking at, Starbucks' stock, which is up 500% since the recession started. And when you look at Dunkin' Donuts is up something like 90% since it first started trading on the market. Coffee now is a $30 billion industry. You know, Americans now more than ever are working harder for less pay. Incomes are mostly stagnant, when you talk about in real numbers. Since the late 70s, I think, when you look at the total cost of living, Americans haven't really got an increase in pay. We have a soaring national debt, which is going to keep Americans and millennials, particularly, in debt for the rest of their lives, pretty much. There's stiffer competition with jobs because of globalization and you having to compete with your job with someone who lives in a country that has basically the cost of living that's 1/10 of what yours is, and on top of that, they're learning English at a very young age nowadays in school. Tuition and healthcare prices are soaring through the roof. Obamacare is increasing in some places 100 to 200% in 2017. I mean, like, millennials have this uh, this self entitlement sense, and millennials are, for the most part, have a reputation for being lazy. They're confronting an economic environment now that they need to work really harder and than their parents did. They have to deal with more economic uncertainty than their parents did. There's more competition for jobs than their parents had. So the only solution really that Americans have come up with is to fuel their tanks with more coffee. And more caffeine will that's what's helping them work these longer hours for less pay. We need to look at the numbers. We really need to look at the numbers. In the year 2000, coffee sales were around 6 billion. In 2016, they're revved up to be near 15 billion dollars in America. So make no mistake about it. Coffee is something that sales happen to increase in economic downturn. Millennials, they're getting hooked at really young ages on this stuff. Some of them as early as high school. And they're not just drinking coffee, they're drinking espressos and lattes and these very heavily caffeinated beverages that they're paying like $5 for sometimes. It's mostly Americans under 30 that are suffering from this. Since 2008, coffee sales are up, espresso type of drinks are up 300%. There's just really no end in sight. I want to give you some figures. So since 2008, the number of Americans age 18 to 24 that identify with drinking a espresso type of beverage is up 22% from 9%. When you look at people 25 to 39, that's up. That's quadruple. That's up from 8% to 29%. The total number of people that drink coffee type beverages, not just lattes, 18 to 24, 13%. Now it's 36%. And when we look at 25 to 39, it's up to 41% from 19% in the same period. We now have 6 out of 10 adults 25 to 39 consuming at least 1 cup of coffee a day, with almost half of Americans age 18 to 25 as well doing that. It's 49%. People like to blame Starbucks and say it's Starbucks. They charge $5 for a cup of coffee, but that's not Starbucks. Starbucks is reacting to the market. The marketplace is a market where people are so tired and beat up from working so much for so little in these type of corporate jobs. Being a corporate bitch and just having to work all these crazy long hours for less and less pay. Now you're working 30 hours a week. So people are working two jobs for 30 hours a week because companies don't want to pay for your health care. So they're cutting job hours down to 30 hours a week. You look at these stock prices of these, especially Starbucks. This is ridiculous. 500% it's up since 2009. You could have been rich if you just bought Starbucks shares. Um, Dunkin' Donuts is the same thing, but Dunkin' Donuts not so much. Number one, Dunkin' Donuts only started trading in 2011, and number two, Dunkin' Donuts hasn't been in the business of selling those expensive drinks for so long. They're trying to, but they're more associated with crappy food and like really cheap shit coffee that tastes horrible. So they've been trying to recover from having that type of a reputation associated with them. But what you need to understand is that when you look at these trends over the last 7 years, and you look at now the slowing GDP numbers, and you're looking at, uh, fear of a recession again in 2017. But if you learned anything about that, you know that that means people are just going to drink more coffee. What other options do people really have when you think about it to work two, three jobs? Drinking 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, some people are drinking coffee cups this big, 20, 30 ounces of coffee in the morning. Like, this addiction is very real. This is a real drug, and it's a real problem in this country. And it's not being addressed as so, despite, the health risks that are associated with it. People just keep drinking more and more coffee because they don't really have a choice. They have to pay their bills one way or another. So what you need to understand is that the workforce's misery is going to be capitalized on by corporate America. Starbucks, the stock price really over the last year hasn't done that well, and that's because there's competition. There's more competition from local stores. There's more competition from Starbucks. There's more competition. Even now, McDonald's is even getting into this espresso business. Everybody and their grandma is getting into the business of selling coffee because coffee is the new food. People are drinking more coffee than they are consuming food. It's a dangerous precedent that's being set. But you know what? There's a lot of opportunity to make money, and when there's opportunity, people are going to step in to really take that opportunity. So what you need to think about, especially if you're investing, is if you want to get into these stocks. They seem like they could be overpriced at this point, but Starbucks is looking at getting into China. When you look at China's market, Starbucks wants to double their stores. They now have 2,500 in China. Over the next 5 years or so, they're going to double them to 5,000. When you look at China's workforce and the slave labor that's there, the opportunity is enormous to capitalize on these type of beverages. People in China work like dogs. They work for very little pay. Sometimes they're working 20 hours a day. Sometimes they're working 22 hours a day. Sometimes they're being held up in these factories that have slave, labor conditions. And there's a lot of opportunity to profit off these coffee sales over there. But we're not talking coffee, we're talking tea mostly in China. So Starbucks, that's their plan on addressing, this decline in their growth, which has been tremendous over the last 7 years. But now the competition is stiffening. And what you want to look at really before getting into this is Dunkin' Donuts. When we look at Dunkin' Donuts, I just want to give you a few numbers about Dunkin' Donuts, all right? So Dunkin' Donuts in 2011, when it started trading, July 27th, it opened at $25.22. Yesterday, which was October 31st of 2016, it closed at $48.36. The highest it went up to, which was July of last year, it was $54.84. It's down from that. It's trading now at like $48. And it's trading because at that price because Dunkin' Donuts basically came out and said, like, we're worried about the economic conditions in the United States. We feel that it's deteriorating. We feel that we could go back into recession. And because of that, we're going to cut the amount of stores that we feel like opening. But you have to think about the long term. The bad economy in the long term is good for Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah, people can drink coffee from home, but most people like to get their coffee on the go. They're in such a rush; they don't have time to sit at home and really make a cup of coffee. Starbucks in the last 5 years is up 82.51%. So you would have made a ton of money if you invested in Starbucks. I mean, in Dunkin' Donuts, uh, especially if you were using a margin account or something like that. It's really crazy. The coffee addiction in America is something that's unprecedented, and you might as well profit off it. You know what I mean? Whether or not Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts are set to profit more, like in the immediate future, in the next few months, is yet to be seen. But you could bet your bottom dollar that the way things are going in the United States, especially with this election, it looks like regardless of the outcome of this election, the economy is going in the tank. The economy has been in the tank since 2008. We have more people not working now. The labor force continues to shrink. On top of that, you can't start a business. The taxes and the regulations are, they just keep increasing no matter who's in office. No matter what the people in office are promising you, the conditions for starting a business are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And these big corporations, like Starbucks, are the only ones that can deal with, those type of expenses, especially when it comes to something like coffee. So if Hillary Clinton becomes elected, you could bet your bottom dollar that Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks are going to do great. The economy is going to be in the toilet. No, there won't be competition anymore from small coffee shops. These coffee shops are all going to go out of business under Hillary Clinton. That's pretty much a guarantee. The rate of opening of small business is the lowest now that it's been in U.S. history. And that's going to continue with these type of policies, like Hillary Clinton continuing the same type of shitty policies regarding small businesses that have been going on for the last 20, 30 years. It's not going to turn around. Like, it's just going to continue to deteriorate. And the big dogs like the Starbucks and the Dunkin' Donuts are going to be putting your mom and pop coffee shop out of business if they haven't already in your neighborhood. So consider that. Consider that for your investments, and consider the addiction. The addiction is very real. It's a very big problem. When you talk about drug addictions in America, coffee should be the number one thing you're talking about. More people are addicted to coffee than any other drug in the United States. 6 out of 10 Americans drink at least 1 cup of coffee a day. That's crazy. That's crazy. 6 out of 10 Americans are drinking a cup of coffee at least every day. If you're not a part of that, 6 out of 10, if you're a part out of the minority, the 4 out of 10 that aren't drinking that, bravo. I applaud you. But most people have to drink coffee just, to get the energy to survive. It's sad, but it's a fact of life.